It does. It makes perfect sense that they would say that. Projection is a powerful thing. But if I had wanted money or revenge, I would have done this 10 years ago when it was infinitely safer. And he was still a very public figure. But neither one of those things interested me. I was living my life. I was beyond, well beyond what had happened 20 years ago with my family. And it would have served no purpose other than getting revenge or maybe making some money.
And what do you say to the people who say America knew exactly what they were doing when they elected Donald Trump? He's kind of an open book. What don't they know?
Yeah, I don't think that's at all true, because outside of New York, I don't think people really quite understood the truth behind his business record and his financial failures, which are legion and serial. Beyond that, it was such a complex election. There was so much going on that I don't think the choices that people had to make were necessarily based on an honest appraisal. There was so much interference from so many different sources. And the other thing that I think it's really important to realize, and that I certainly didn't realize before 2016, was just how enabled he would be, which maybe I should have seen coming. Because,
well, it's one of the things you write about. You say that basically he was enabled, institutionalized is your word, his whole life. What did you mean by that?
As I say, there's a through line from the House to Trump Management, which was my grandfather's company in Brooklyn, to the Trump Organization, which my grandfather helped Donald set up in Manhattan, to the White House. And those are all situations and circumstances in which Donald has always been protected and continues to be protected from his inadequacies, from his incompetence, from his lack of knowledge, from his failures. And he's always had support of more powerful people. He's always had people protecting him from his mistakes or from people who would try to hold him account. And he's always been amply financed. So, as I also write, how do we gauge this man's ability to function in the real world, as he's never really had to? And that, to me, is quite terrifying.
You're a trained clinical psychologist.
Yes.
You come to the conclusion he's a narcissist.
Yeah, I explicitly avoid diagnosing him.
I was going to ask you about that. Have any
Sure.
qualms as a psychologist laying out the possible things that he could be suffering from?
No, I think it's useful, especially since so many other people have done it, and I thought it was important to address that, since it has been such an important issue, especially given the Goldwater rule versus the duty to warn that psychologists and psychiatrists have been grappling with. So I wanted to address all of that without explicitly saying, this is his diagnosis. He's not my patient. He's never been my patient. I do, however, have access to information about him that nobody else has had. So it was a lot easier for me to put the diagnoses that are out there in context of his developmental history.
Boil it down. What's the single most important thing you think the country needs to know about your uncle?
He's utterly incapable of leading this country, and it's dangerous to allow him to do so.
Based on what you see now or what you saw then?
Based on what I've seen my entire adult life.
Talk about the relationship between your father and his younger brother.
My dad was very patient with Donald.
He was about 8 years older?
About 7.5, 8, yeah. So it's a very big gap, They were in practically different generations, they didn't travel in the same circles. But my dad, when they were younger, included him when he could, especially when Donald was sort of at loose ends, when he was at Fordham and living at the house and didn't have a lot of friends, and Dad would ask his friends to invite him to dinner parties or take him out on the boat with his fraternity brothers fishing.